You just hit $10,000 in savings. It's the first time in your life you've had real money sitting there. And right now, you're standing at a fork that most people never even notice they're standing at. Most people cross it and immediately start thinking about what they can finally buy. Because what you do in the next few weeks with that 10 grand quietly decides what your 30s look like. I'm going to show you exactly what happens on both paths using real Australian numbers, and the gap at the end genuinely surprised me when I ran it. Same suburb, same wages, same 20-year-old ambitions, completely different 30s. My mate Carl hit 10,000 at the same time I did. Same age, same trade, near enough the same pay packet. 10 years later, one of us owns a home. The other is still renting and still paying off a bike. He doesn't ride much anymore. This isn't a story about being smart. Neither of us was. It's about one decision made at 20 that neither of us thought was a big deal at the time. Nobody sat us down and explained what was actually at stake in that moment. So let's start with why $10,000 is such a strange and important number. Because understanding why it matters is what makes the right choice feel obvious instead of restrictive. Because financially, 10,000 isn't much. It won't buy a house. It won't let you quit. On paper, it barely registers. But psychologically, it's the single hardest milestone in personal finance. And once you cross it, something genuinely changes in your head. Something shifts in how you think about money, and it's more valuable than the balance itself. The first 10,000 is hard because it's built entirely from sacrifice. Every dollar came from you saying no to something. There's no shortcut through that part, and that's exactly why so few people get there. There's no compounding helping you yet. No growth doing the heavy lifting. It's just 20 months of $500 over and over. 20 months of choosing the boring option while everyone around you chooses the fun one. But here's what nobody tells you. The second 10,000 arrives faster than the first, and the third faster again. Because now, growth is contributing alongside you. You stopped being the only one putting money in. And the psychological shift matters even more than the maths. At 10,000, you stop being someone who spends and start being someone who invests. That identity change is the actual asset. It's why people who reach 10,000 once usually reach it again and again. The balance can go up and down, but that identity tends to stick for life. So the money matters, but what the money does to how you see yourself matters more, right? So you've got $10,000. What should you actually do with it? There's a correct order, and it's not the exciting one. The exciting version is what gets people into trouble, so let's do this properly. Step 1, and this is non-negotiable. If you have any high-interest debt, that's where the money goes first. All of it until it's gone. Credit cards and personal loans in Australia routinely charge around 20%. Clearing that is a guaranteed, tax-free 20% return. Mathematically, it is identical to earning 20% risk-free with zero volatility. You will never find a guaranteed 20% anywhere else. It's boring, it doesn't feel like investing, and it beats everything else on this list. Clearing it also frees up the repayment permanently, which quietly funds everything that comes next. Step 2, your emergency buffer. Take 2,000 to 3,000 and put it in a high-interest savings account, completely separate from your spending account. The top ongoing savings rates in Australia sit around 5%, so that buffer isn't idle. It's earning while it waits. This is the money that stops a broken down car or a dead phone from becoming a credit card balance. It's not there to make you rich, it's there to protect everything else. Without it, one bad week undoes months of progress and puts you back at the start. And that protection is exactly what most Australians don't have. A huge share of people can't cover one unexpected bill without borrowing. Step 3, and only after the first 2, is the part that actually builds wealth. Whatever's left goes into broad, low-cost index investments. This is the money whose only job is to become more money over decades. Not stock picking, not tips, not whatever a stranger messaged you about. One purchase that owns hundreds of companies at once and then you leave it alone. Boring and broad beats, clever and narrow almost every time over a 10-year horizon. So in my case, 3,000 went to the buffer and 7,000 went into the market. And then I did the single most important thing. I set up $500 a month to move automatically on payday before I ever saw it. That automation is the whole trick. You never decide again, you never negotiate with yourself, and the habit survives every bad month. Willpower fails eventually. A standing transfer never gets tired or has a rough fortnight. Meanwhile, Carl was at the bike shop. And I want to be fair to Carl here, because this is genuinely the part everyone gets wrong about stories like this. Because it's very easy to make the spender look stupid. And that's both unfair and unhelpful. He wasn't reckless. He'd worked hard. He'd saved the $10,000 himself. And he wanted one thing he'd always wanted. He'd earned it as legitimately as I'd earned mine. And he was genuinely thrilled. That's a completely reasonable human decision. And I'd never tell anyone they can't enjoy their money. The problem isn't that Carl bought the bike. It's that the bike was all of it. Every dollar he had, with nothing behind it. There was no fallback, no cushion, and nothing quietly working in the background. No buffer, no investments, no debt cleared, just a $10,000 bike and a zero balance. One purchase took him from $10,000 to nothing in a single afternoon. And a bike isn't a one-off cost. That's the part that quietly does the damage over 10 years. The purchase price is only ever the beginning of what something actually costs you. Registration, insurance, fuel, servicing, tires, and gear run him somewhere around $3,000 a year. That's the number nobody factors in when they're standing in the showroom. So the bike costs him $10,000 up front and another $3,000 every single year, forever. And unlike an investment, every one of those dollars leaves and never comes back. Right, let's fast forward 5 years. Both of us are 25. My $7,000 plus $500 a month has grown to about $47,000, plus the buffer, call it $50,000. It didn't feel like a fortune, but it was more than most people my age had. And here's the thing, it didn't feel like sacrifice by then. $500 a month had just become a bill I paid to myself. The habit had stopped requiring any decisions, which is when saving actually gets easy. Carl's bike at 25 is worth maybe $5,000. He spent $15,000 keeping it running, and he still has nothing saved. But at 25, honestly, the difference didn't look like much. $50,000 versus a bike. We were both doing fine. That's what makes this so hard to warn people about at the time. That's exactly why this is so dangerous. For the first 5 years, the gap looks survivable. It's the second 5 that separate you. By 30, the paths have diverged so far that catching up becomes genuinely difficult. So let's run it to 30. At 30, my invested balance is about $111,000. That's from an ordinary trade wage, with no inheritance, no windfall, and no clever investing. Of that, I contributed $70,000. The other $41,000 is pure growth. Money I never earned and never saved. It arrived without me doing anything at all, purely because the money was in the right place. That growth is the entire reason this works. Compounding did a third of the job while I got on with my life. And that $111,000 is a house deposit. A genuine, real, walk into a bank deposit. That's the moment the whole thing stops being theoretical and becomes a set of keys. So at 30, I bought a modest home. Not flashy, and yes, there's a mortgage on it. But the repayments build my equity instead of someone else's. Every repayment now goes towards something I keep instead of disappearing into a landlord's account. Now Carl at 30. The bike is 10 years old and worth about $3,000. He spent $30,000 keeping it on the road. Almost the entire purchase price has gone, plus 3 times that again in running costs. He has no investments, no buffer, and he's still renting. Same trade as me, same pay, same start. Nothing about his work ethic was different. Only that one decision at 20. The gap between us at 30 is $108,000 from the same income. The same starting point, one decision 10 years earlier. That's what makes this the most important video I could make for anyone in their 20s. But the raw gap actually understates it because it doesn't count what Carl's money would have become. Opportunity cost is invisible, which is exactly why it's so expensive. His original $10,000 invested instead would be $21,500 by 30. And the $3,000 a year in running costs invested would be another $45,700. That's the part that genuinely shocked me when I ran the numbers properly. So the true cost of Carl's motorbike over 10 years is $67,000. $67,000 for a bike he now rides a few times a year. That's worth $3,000. That's what a depreciating asset actually costs, not the sticker price. The sticker price plus everything it eats, plus everything that money could have become. Once you see a purchase that way, big spending decisions get much easier to judge. And I want to be really clear here, because this isn't about never buying anything you enjoy. You're allowed to enjoy your money. I'd argue you should. If Carl had bought a $3,000 bike and invested $7,000, he'd have had the thing he wanted and most of the outcome. The mistake was never the bike. It was going to zero, leaving nothing behind it. Keeping something behind you is what turns a purchase into a choice instead of a setback. Now the part that matters more than any of these numbers, and it's the reason I made this video. Because the money is honestly the smaller half of the story. The real difference between Carl and me wasn't the $10,000. It was what the decision did to the next 10 years of behavior. Once I'd invested that first $10,000, I didn't want to touch it. Watching it grow made me want to protect it. That protective instinct is worth more than any investment strategy you'll ever read about, so I saved more. Every pay rise went partly to the investment before my lifestyle could absorb it. Lifestyle creep never got a foothold because the money was already committed before I saw it. Carl went the other way, and again, completely understandably. With no buffer, every unexpected bill went on a card. With nothing invested, there was nothing to protect. So there was no reason not to spend the next bonus too. It becomes a loop, and from inside it, it feels like bad luck rather than a pattern. That's the psychological trap. Having nothing makes spending easier, and spending keeps you at nothing. Breaking that loop is what the first $10,000 actually does for you, whereas having something makes you want more of it. The first $10,000 isn't just money. It's the thing that changes your defaults. And here's the last number, because this is where it stops being about a house deposit. This is the number that reframes the whole thing. If I never add another cent after 30 and just leave that $111,000 alone until 60, it becomes about $1.12 million. That's the same trade, the same wage, and a millionaire outcome from a decision made at 20. Never adding another dollar. Just the $10,000 at 20 and 10 years of $500 a month, then 30 years of doing absolutely nothing. And if I keep going at $500 a month, it's about 1.87 million. Same person, same income, just a habit that never stopped. That's what the first $10,000 actually buys. Not a bike, not a holiday. A completely different 60-year-old. The gap between those two 60-year-olds was decided in your 20s, not your 50s. So if you've just hit $10,000, here's exactly what to do. Clear high-interest debt. Keep $2,000 to $3,000 as a buffer. Invest the rest somewhere broad and boring. Then automate a monthly amount, whatever you can hold, and genuinely forget about it. The automation matters more than the amount. Consistency at a small number will always beat heroics at a big one. And if you want the bike, buy a cheaper bike. Just never let the fun purchase take the whole $10,000, because that's the part you can't undo. This is general information only, not financial advice, and all figures are illustrative estimates based on an assumed 8% return. Do your own research and speak to a licensed professional. Everyone's situation is different, and the right split for you may not be the one I used. If you've just hit your first $10,000, Tell me in the comments what you're doing with it. Hit like and subscribe for more honest Aussie money videos, and I'll see you in the next one.